Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Valentino Stoll.
Hey now.
I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And this week we have a special guest, and that is Gustavo Valenzuela. I hope I got close.
You did, yes.
So Gustavo and I had a conversation a little bit ago. I think we met over LinkedIn, I want to say.
Correct.
And I ran across startups on Rails. I was like, hey, this looks cool, and I wanted to know what he was doing with it. So we had a chat about it, and I think you're probably better to tell people what it is than me. So I'll let you take it from here. You want to just tell people kind of a little bit about your background and then what Startups on Rails is and what you're hoping to do with it?
Of course. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you. First, like I said, thank you for allowing me to be here in your podcast. This is my first one, so I'm excited. Hopefully the first of many. Yeah. This is like the only type of interaction that we get among developers, right? Developer seems to be a very lonely profession. So podcast is a good way.
Unless your boss is overly involved in what you're doing. I won't complain. Never mind.
Yeah. So like you said, I've been working on Startups on Rails for a while. I am a Ruby on Rails developer. So I guess you can consider me a newbie or a how do you call it, the new career, or forget the term that they use, but pretty much I'm in the process of trying to get into a full-time employment. I've had a few contracts here and there, but I'm trying to get in full-time. But I've been doing Ruby on Rails actually since 2014. That was the first time I learned about Rails through a bootcamp. The first time around, I kind of just wanted to learn so that I can build my own products. That was my original goal. And so I did the bootcamp and then tried a few different things. Didn't really work out. I got distracted in other areas. So kind of abandoned development up until I think it was the beginning of the pandemic. I don't know if it was before or after. Picked it up again, tried to, get good at it, trying to kind of learn the holes that I had from the first time. And that went well. And then the pandemic hit us. And there was all these layoffs. So I was, oh my goodness, I came back to development for nothing. But I started, yeah, that's crazy. So I kept with it. And then I, because there weren't a lot of listings or jobs, I wanted to kind of find out what the Ruby on Rails companies in the area, even if I figure even if they don't have a job posting, I could always reach out to them and try to, get a connection going. And I found out that there wasn't any place that I could see what companies were built on Ruby on Rails, so I can reach out to them. And pretty much only the ones that post a job opening. So I decided to kind of start building my own database on my own. And so I figure, I could use that, but this could also be something that other people in the community could use. So I found the domain startupsonrails.com, and I started to build that as a database, just a documentation of companies built on Ruby on Rails. And so, I started sharing with the community, decided to get some engagement with the community. I got some feedback and people liked the project. So I, kept building it. And actually I stopped for a bit. And I stopped for a while. I stopped building it. So now I'm back. I've been building it like for the last couple months to make it into a full-on project that people could use. That's kind of my story, more or less. I'm a father of 2 girls, a husband, and a Ruby on Rails developer.
Awesome. Yeah, being a girl dad's fun.
It is.
I think Valentino has kids too, but I don't know if he has girls or not.
I've got 1.
Yeah, I have 3 and 2 boys. So, but yeah, so Boy, we could talk about girl dadding, but that's a whole different thing. So first of all, I'm just kind of curious because I love the idea, right? It's like who's out there using Rails. How do you start figuring out what companies actually use Rails? I mean, some of them are kind of, I guess, well known, right? There's, Basecamp or Heroku or GitHub. I think Airbnb was started on Rails. And then I also am aware that like companies like Twitter, they started out using Rails, but then kind of migrated to, I think it's a mixed stack. They probably have Rails in there somewhere still because it's hard to get rid of a technology once you adopt it. But I know that a lot of their stuff went to Scala and stuff like that. And so, yeah, how do you decide who's on the list and how do you figure out who's using Rails?
Yeah, so that was a challenging situation in the beginning. So my first approach was to kind of manually get as many as I could on my own, and then reach out to the community and do some type of outsourcing or crowdsourcing, and get people to kind of submit their either companies that they work for or their own projects or companies they know of, and that worked to a certain degree. But I got a couple hundred companies that way.
Right.
So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to do some scraping and looking through different websites and listings and things like that. Ultimately, I think there's about 700,000 websites built on Ruby on Rails. I believe. So that's going to be a challenging task. So I'll take any ideas or input from the community.
Is there a way for people to submit, hey, we use Rails, right?
Yes. Usually what I do right now is I periodically post a tweet or an X and ask people to give me some ideas. I should have built something where people can submit on the website, but I haven't built that yet.
Yeah.
But so far it's just really through Twitter.
They use Rails at Doximity, don't they, Valentino?
Yeah, we do pretty heavily.
Medicine. Okay. Yeah, I noticed that there's a number of medical companies or startups that use Rails. At least a handful I've seen of pretty big startups.
Yeah.
This reminds me of so I don't know if you know, but Andy Kroll has recently published usingrails.com.
Yes.
I do like kind of how the layout of your site works though. What are you pulling information from that data source as well, or
I'm pulling information from a lot of different sources. Yeah, and I do know. I mean, he's one of the 10 that just recently popped up, which kind of
right. I know there's so many now.
Yeah,
how do you keep
I
track
started
and
with nothing.
I guess where does this I guess I'm trying. The design of yours is awesome. I wish I had seen this, to be honest, so many times in my career. Right, being able to filter it by different things and tooling and things like that. How do you how do you think about the consolidation of these different companies and maybe what are your plans for it, I guess?
Right? Yeah, that's a good question. So I just recently noticed that there's a number of companies that I kind of I don't want to build something that's already, doesn't have a utility, or, a lot of people are doing the same thing. So I think there's opportunity to build on top of this database, right? To build features that could be useful for the community. The lowest hanging tree is just categories, right? But also I want to know, I don't know, even categories that are a little more outside of the typical categories. Like I'm thinking companies that are more active hiring junior developers, or companies that are more active supporting open source. That type of categorizing. And I think just giving the users kind of options as to who they would want to support, right? Or another category could be the substitutes for the Rails substitutes or Ruby substitute for such and such products. But there's, I think, opportunity to create content on top of that. Content targeted towards not necessarily developers, but product people or business people. Just marketing the tools and the framework in general. That's just one, but I have a list of ideas that I could build on top of the database. Another thing that one of the things that I like to do is kind of get involved with the developers in a company. So one of the features that I'm working on right now is adding the ability for companies to list open source that they're working on. So, or if they need help with whatever open source. So, through that, if I'm a developer looking to connect with other company, I can go to the company, see if they have some open source issues. I can, start participating through that, and maybe through that, hopefully, make a connection with that, with the company, if that makes any sense. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I feel like could be built on top of just a pure database.
Yeah, I loved seeing that on the company view. It would be really cool if you could submit a pull request right from the page, and say, "Hey, I'm up. I'd like to update the information here. Have a sign in with GitHub kind of thing, so you can verify that they're part of that organization, even, right?" Because I mean, it definitely feels like that's what you could do. Yeah, I don't know. How do that's the hard part with all of this stuff is it's just you, right? The community, how do you get the community involved in all of these different sites that exist and garner support, right? Where do you find the most people want to help contribute to so far?
You mean in my personal project or just in general?
For Startup on Rails.
Yeah. So I haven't really, to be honest, the last couple months I haven't been interacting, but it's a good question I can ask the community as to where direction they would like for this to go. But and then you're asking in terms of having people contribute to this project, or is that the question, or just what people would like in terms of features?
I guess I'm interested in both, but I was more where people are currently interested in contributing to add stuff to. Do you see people are they reach out to you about wanting to update specific things, or is it pretty low volume at this point?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really launched officially, so I haven't put it out there. But that is a good question. I haven't asked. I haven't seen any. I haven't had any request. And also the idea of maybe open sourcing this project sounds interesting, right? So people can, contribute directly. That would be a good idea. I would have to clean my database. It's a little embarrassing right now.
that's the story of like more than half my code. It's like, oh, there's a ton of junk in here.
Yeah. So but that's an interesting idea, and it's another way to gain experience, right? Managing this open source project would be interesting.
Yeah, I'm also curious. So you mentioned that you wanted to know what companies were kind of local to you that were using Rails. Maybe for a job search or something. But and that kind of appeals to me. I'm curious also, just from kind of the broader view, because a lot of people that I talk to are, how do I put it? They're kind of looking for their next position or their next, whatever, their next job. And yeah, it's just, I think something like that would really help. But also with all the layoffs and everything else, do you see the Rails market shrinking or growing, or do you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just know that about 18 months ago, I had recruiters hitting me up. I wouldn't normally make it through the whole interview, but right now, I'm trying to apply and things like that. It's hard. I mean, in terms of the feeling, it doesn't feel like there's openings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a good time, if the openings are there and you just have to directly kind of get in touch with the company and see if you can get in that way, or they just flat out no openings or no opportunities. But in any case, it's always better to try out different strategies, right? And
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because I think there are companies that use Rails that could use the help, but because of the way the economy is sitting right now, it's it's just hard for them to be able to afford or justify the additional headcount, right? It's not, hey, there's not work to be done. It's just, given the current state of things, we're not comfortable, making the commitment to pay another salary given our, where we see finances going and where we see the economy going long term. Because if you want to stay open, you kind of have to plan ahead with your cash flow, and it's hard.
Yeah. It's just a matter of numbers, right? It's math.
Yeah.
I think to me that that the economy together with AI, which I've been using the last few months more and more, I do think it makes developers way more effective, right? Way more.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for me, it saves me a feature that I could sometimes take me 2 days to do. I can do it in half a day, and that's me being like super careful, looking at everything, trying to analyze everything, and not really knowing my way around. But
right.
I think that it's a fact to me that something that needed 2 or 3 developers, maybe now 1 developer can do it, and that's just a reality. But I think a good way for developers like that are unemployed, I think a good alternative is building your own products, right? Building something that's become entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So how did you build this thing? What's the stack? What did you go with?
So Ruby on Rails, that's what I've been doing for a while. It's the fastest thing,
Are you using all the shiny new tools, like all the solid stuff?
No, I haven't even gotten into that. Wow. Yeah. I feel like there's so much. It's hard to catch up with everything.
I feel like that's one thing that's missing, that maybe some magic contributor out there will contribute, but just all the features of Rails, pick them apart, look at all the lists, editors, drop down selects, forms, all the different things that you could do with it, just like that you can just see better. Because I feel like the guides are a great start, but like it's more granular than I want, right? Like I want, okay, like I'm working on email stuff. Like what features do I have available in Rails, right? And I feel like there's so many just for email, right? Like it would be interesting to see a visualization of that.
So you're talking about like features in Action Mailer, and then there's also the other one that reads the emails.
Yeah, and even on a more scoped level of like, okay, like I have like an active record model, like what are all the features that I can inject into this model, right? Because I'm using active record as like a base class, right? And like there's so many like DSL methods you could use that are specific to that. That would be nice to just like, I know like the guides like have a good like general overview of like associations and like smaller pieces, right? But like I don't know, like what about the more specific I don't know.
Yeah, different use cases. I think it's like
so many use cases.
It's a double-edged sword. It's the double-edged sword with frameworks like Rails, right? That it's so good for you because it gives you everything, but on the other hand, it gives you everything. So there's tons and tons and tons of features and aspects to it that are, it's hard to know everything. But I think that almost gets solved by AI, right? AI is good at scrolling through everything, and then we just verify that it's indeed what we need. I think AI and Rails it's a good pairing.
I would say that is kind of true. It depends on what they're training it on, right? So like Action Mailbox was the other library I was trying to think of, right? Where it effectively it goes and it grabs the emails and then it essentially routes it through something that's sort of like a controller, right? And so then it does things with the emails, which I think is really slick, right? And that's something that I can think of a couple of use cases for, but I don't know if a lot of people are using it, and so I don't know if the code that they have fed into the AI large language models to say, hey, this is a good, a good example of how to do this, right? Because it has to train it a bunch of times. And so if you ask it for Action Mailbox code, it may not be great, right? But if you're looking at some of the more common stuff like Active Record and a lot of the more common use cases that people put Active Record to, I would imagine that that's probably a lot more commonly going to come up and be handled well by the large language models, right? Because you're gonna have a zillion examples because everybody's using models. But even then, like if there's some obscure feature that not a lot of people use, even if it's a powerful one and could do good things for your app, it may not opt for it because it's been trained over and over and over again on how people actually solve the problem. And so I can see where it comes in and is helpful, but I think the less well used features, your AI may not be trained well enough to pick it up and give you the option.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you still need to be knowledgeable.
Yeah,
but I think it's hard to keep all that overhead in mind when you're coding, right? There's so much going on, so that's a good way to kind of like. I mean, AI does well at thinking of everything and shrinking it down, and then we're better at verifying, right? We can verify.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that you're wrong to do it however the AI tells you to if it works, because it does save you time and effort, right? You don't have to go look up the API and make sure you have all the arguments in the right order and whatever else. And there are a handful of common things in Rails. Like I can never remember if it's options for select from collection or options from collection for select. And I always screw it up because I always guess it wrong. Right. And so having the AI go, oh, I know what you're doing. That's kind of nice. But yeah, and so then, sometimes it'll give me a longer snippet of code and I'll wind up tweaking it because it's like, yeah, this is close, but it's not exact.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
and so so then it saves me a bunch of time. And even if there's a more elegant solution, it doesn't matter that I don't know it because I have something that works. I can look at it and visually parse it, and I didn't have to spend 2 hours figuring out how to do it the other way.
Yeah.
Speaking of AI, it makes me think about your new startup on Rails site where you have like a Rails AI category, and it makes me like imagine like I would love to be able to see like what companies are using what aspects of Rails, like not only just like Rails and AI specifically, but like, all right, is anybody actually using Action Mailbox in a production app? Like, how are they using it? Like, are they willing to disclose that? Like, just in an itemized list, right? Like, that would be super helpful. Like, not only for like the Rails community in general, right? Like, but how are people building stuff, right? Like, exposing like the use cases because like there's so many, like, right? Like, it seems like there are so many that like also give talks at these conferences all the time, and you'd think like there would be a way to expose that other than just like publishing a conference talk. Maybe,
1000%. Yeah, that's exactly why I kind of have it there in the corner because I haven't gone in that direction. But that's a completely different thing. Doing a little research and that's something that I'm interested to and figuring out who's using it and how they're using it, figuring out the companies, but also like you said, the details as to how they're using it. That's something that I'll definitely work on. And I mean, that's the newest thing. I should probably be working on it right now. That's a good opportunity for content.
I mean, you could start like ingesting the conference video talks and just like have AI categorize which company they work for and what they're working on.
One other thing that comes to mind that would be interesting with this, and I know we're kind of brainstorming this, but I mean, you said you're pre-launch and these are all ideas. And maybe we could talk about what the minimum viable product looks like, but I keep hearing from people that Rails is dying. And, I understand some of the arguments that people make, but I still see a lot of companies starting up on Rails. And I also see a lot of companies that have adopted Rails or that started on Rails, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that are doubling and tripling down on it. And so I don't know that, and maybe we just need a better definition of what people mean by dying, but it'd be interesting to see, okay, if you start a startup with Rails, right, then it gets listed, and that way we can see. And then some of the other companies, right, they come in and they say, we started in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, right? And so you can see how long they've been out there and running things on Rails. And so that way we kind of get a feel for, okay, yeah, there were a gazillion companies that started up in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? And then you get into 2016 and maybe there are half that many, right? You get to 2020 and you can see, oh, there's an uptick here for whatever reason. Or it'd be really fascinating just to kind of see how that all comes out. And then people can see, oh, okay, we've got, we have a list of 100 startups that started in 2024, right, and more getting added all the time, and of the 120 of them are venture funded, right, which means that I was going to say they have a better chance of making it, but that's not necessarily true. But so many are venture funded, so many are kind of micro SaaS kind of tiny services. So many of them are, right? And so then you can get an idea of, oh, okay, so this is where the action's at, and we can see what the trend is, right? We can say, oh, okay, we're getting more companies in also in industries, right? Which you're already doing, right? We're seeing more healthcare apps starting up, or we're seeing more education apps starting up, or hey, given the current political climate, we're seeing a lot more political bent apps coming out, or whatever. So anyway, I think that'd be really, really interesting just to kind of see what that trend line looks like, because it's kind of hard to know, but if you give people a way to self-report, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. In the data aspect of it is something that is I'm fascinated by, and the idea that it can become way more granular, that how
Right.
we process or play with the data, in terms of like when they started, how are they doing, what type of volume in terms of sales or revenue and things like that, the specific industries and things like that. To me, I find that very interesting, and I also think that it could also influence potential entrepreneurs, right, that are trying to build their own products. And we can kind of tailor that data into content and put it out there through, and see if people can make decisions based on the data.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of it just comes down to what questions are people going to ask of a system like this, and then what data do you need in order to answer them.
Yeah, it's a chicken and an egg problem situation, right?
Yeah, I think if the community just fully adopted, startups on Rails, or something like it, and everybody just kind of commonly submitted to it and kept it up to date, I think it would be very interesting, just because I think we would be getting decent data on that. And I don't know that every company is going to be willing to tell you, hey, we're using these gems or these features of Rails, but the ones that are willing to share it, you can at least give us some idea of what's going on. But as for, hey, we've been around this long and we're using Rails, right? Or maybe we've been around this long and we've been using Rails and we had a major rewrite, or a significant chunk of our stuff was kind of reworked at this point, right? That might be interesting. But again, even if they just put in, we started in 2006, we've been using Rails the whole time, we're a company that's X so many big, or maybe you go ask LinkedIn, how big is this company? Then, right, then you get an idea of what we're looking at.
Yeah, that is definitely interesting. And I think what I found over time was that you need more compelling features or reasons for people to come back to the website, both the users, right, and the companies. So, and that's kind of why I get trapped in, okay, well, what can I do to make it compelling, to make it more appealing for people to want to participate, both in companies and users. So one of the things that I was thinking of, is perhaps using the company page as a quote unquote the engineering page that a lot of websites have, right? Like you go to Airbnb/engineering, you'll see blogs related to engineering, and you see like what you just talked about, like more detailed things about what they've been doing. They post their open source, stuff that is related to the engineering community, and I think that might be a service that could be offered to smaller companies. Like you have the Airbnbs that have the resources to have these type of pages, but this could be something that targets smaller companies, that a place where they can post data or content related engineering to engineering. So I don't know. Yeah, the challenging has been that, like, how can we compel companies to participate, and through that also get users to want to visit. So chicken and egg problem, as I said before.
Yep.
I mean, to your point though, like a lot of companies, they want, right, like exposure. They want other developers to know what they're working on, what they're doing in the community, right? Like they're despite what many people may say about like the, you know, hiring market for any programming, but like Rails specifically, right? Like they still want that exposure. Like there's going to be a point where, you know, hiring is hot again, right? Like it goes in cycles, you know, like there are always lulls and there's always highs, like, and you know, as any company that is like, you know, tight on resources, which you know, from like a developer standpoint, right, like, which just happens, like eventually, like once you're to a certain size, you're like gonna have this point where, okay, you've been developing this new thing for so long and then it releases and you're like, oh crap, like everybody's using it and we need more people to manage this thing that we've built, right? Like I feel like it's just like a thing that happens, and you want as a company to like get the exposure to the people that, you know, could potentially be working for, you know, the company. And I don't know, I feel like as a developer who has looked for a job before, right, like I've looked to see who's like, you know, doing the conferences, who's like present in the community, right, like who's open sourcing stuff. Like these are all things that I think about personally, and it's all just a matter of exposure for the company, right? And there's honestly a lot of great companies out there that don't do that. Right? And is there a way where that process could just be a little easier, right? I think is what you're getting at. And I think that's completely the case. Like making it just like a uniform way where people can, like, you know, publish numbers to some, you know, public place. I feel like is what's needed, really. We're still lacking that in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a direction, right? To me, I'm the type of personality that I want everything. So I suffer with paralysis of analysis. So that's a good feature, and I end up wanting to build everything, and then you end up building nothing. So, but I think that's a good strategy for like an MVP. You know, going in that direction, allowing companies to build their own profile and post their technical content. Yeah, that's something that I'll seriously think about.
Yep. So I'm curious, as we're kind of digging through this. I think we've had a lot of ideas around what we could do, or what you could do with startups on Rails, but I'm a little curious, like what other resources that are kind of like this would you like to see for the Ruby or Rails community? Because it seems like there are definitely opportunities out there for us to provide something that allows Rails developers to get information on, or collaborate on, or, you know, whatever, on other aspects of the community.
Yeah. Oof. So I think one that comes to mind right now, and it's not necessarily related to these, is more on the way of helping newcomers or new developers navigate through what I call the last mile of developing, the last mile of learning, right? That last mile where it's like, okay, you've learned, you've been through all these boot camps or self-learning. That last piece of learning that is gonna give you the ability to be ready, job ready, right? Which I think that content is hard to find. one of the things that I was part of was the agency of learning. A friend of mine, Dave Paola, he started, which is just pretty much get a group of people together, a group of young developers and a few senior developers. And what we did was participate in open source. We helped, contributed to open source, but we did it in a way that was more structured. In that we almost did it like a job, right? So pick a issue, submit a proposal, and the proposal is gonna be not necessarily code, just like what's the strategy on how you're gonna solve this issue. There's a code review, like a community code review, and where they pick, go at you and ask you questions. And once you have a pretty solid proposal, you're going to submit the work on the issue and then submit and get a review. So I think that was very helpful in terms of getting like almost professional experience, right? I don't know if I haven't really worked for a company, but I don't know if that's the way it would work. But it felt like, okay, it feels like I can talk about something that looks like a professional experience. So that was a way that Dave kind of visualized this issue or this problem, the last mile. But I think there's something there, like helping people navigate through the last mile. But I also know that the state of the industry is not necessarily favorable for new developers. So I don't know if it's good timing for that.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of kind of the last mile, right? It's okay, you can build a Rails application, but here's the rest of the stuff you have to be able to do or know how to, right? That they don't necessarily teach you or spend a lot of time on.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of these are more intangible, things that you got to wrestle, you got to wrestle with, the dynamics on your a manager, your engineer manager. A lot of it is emotional. You get some feedback and like, dude, I worked so hard on this. What do you mean I still need to do more? And it has to do with my preferences. Like, I prefer it this way. I know it works, but this is the way I prefer. Things like that are not very tangible. That was helpful to me.
Right. Very cool. Well, I told you guys I have a hard stop coming up, so I'm going to push us over to picks. This has been fun to talk about. I mean, one other thing that I've been looking at putting together actually is a directory of learning resources for Ruby and Rails, right? And so essentially it would list, and I've started on the code base and I've been working on it for a while. I just haven't launched it yet, but and I've based it on our picks, so it's called rubypicks.com. But the idea is yeah, so it's here, you can search podcasts or podcast episodes, you can search YouTube videos, conference talks, blog posts, documentation, right? And you tell it kind of what you're looking for, gems, so Ruby gems, and then it'll list out all the resources out there, and then people can rate and review them and things like that, so that the ones that get more highly rated, and we also try and attach versions, right? So that, you can put in what version of Rails or device or whatever you're using. But yeah, then it'll come back and it'll say, okay, these are some highly rated resources that align with what you're doing. And so then, maybe you get the walkthrough on how to set up Stripe or the walkthrough on how to whatever. And the other thing is that I would like to share some of the search data on the back end that says essentially these are the most common searches that don't have a lot of results. And that way people know, oh, I could do a video on this, right? Or, hey, I could write a blog post on this, and just kind of spur the community into taking action and providing that kind of stuff. So,
sounds like a good idea. Yeah, I like that. So people don't waste their time. And yeah, it happened to me too, that you wasted time working on material that might not be as relevant. But if you know what's number 1, number 2, number 3. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, let's go ahead and do picks. Valentino, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So all my picks are AI related today, probably as usual. But I've been the folks at Hugging Face are just like on fire lately. And I've been experimenting.
There's so much stuff there.
Much stuff. I mean, they're just announcing stuff like crazy.
Yeah.
And I've been playing with they have transformers.js, which basically lets you run inference using the Onyx runtime of LLM models in the browser using WASM. And so you can download various models from Hugging Face and perform the inference of various features like summarizing or categorizing stuff or all kinds of different pipelines that they provide. And you just do it all in the browser. So if you have sensitive information, you don't want like pass to servers and you want to do some stuff in the browser, it works really well. I even got it to do a RAG in the browser. Just fully local in the browser, doing embeddings and then searching it and running a small model to do the generation. But it works and it's just like crazy.
Wow.
So I'm excited to mess around with that more. So that's Transformers.js. They have a GitHub for it and everything. And the other one that they also released, I'm trying to get the name of it, but they have so they have a leaderboards that they manage where they run all of the large language through different arenas and rankings. And so they've open sourced the pipeline that they use for running those evaluations and have open source kind of to try and garner support from the community to like publish different open evaluation data sets and algorithms and things like that. And it's just really awesome and well done. I think it's called Light Eval. And then on top of that, on the evaluation side, where if you're not familiar with evaluations, it's just a matter of like testing whether or not the outputs do a specific thing, and you can evaluate them in a lot of different criteria. But they also published a guidebook, which has like a huge just data bank of different ways that you can evaluate LLMs. And so LLMs as a judge, human evaluations, they have benchmarking, and it's just like a great like go-to guide for doing all of this stuff.
Interesting.
Awesome.
May I ask a question regarding your the first one that you picked? What kind of machine are you using to run that model? Are you running it from your local machine or?
It's local machine. I have an M1 MacBook. I have not tried it on a lesser machine, so I am curious how well it performs on maybe a Chromebook or something like that. I haven't tested it.
Yeah, M1, and then what kind of RAM do you have a good RAM for that? Because I think is RAM a pretty important resource for that.
So they do a combination blend of GPU and CPU.
Okay.
And so it's primarily like the GPU and CPU that get the most hit out of it. Browsers do let you kind of like download almost infinite amount of content to the browser's cache, which is nice. But so it's more of like the storage is not necessarily an issue because it'll store it just in the browser as like a staged aspect for the model itself. But yeah, that's a good question about memory. I haven't done any benchmarks yet on the memory consumption.
Wow. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I'm diving in. Are you done? Because I can just roll into my picks otherwise.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that was it.
So I usually do a board game pick first, so I'll just throw one out there real quick. This is one that I've actually played on my phone and my computer and not with actual physical pieces. It's Star Realms. I don't know if y'all have played that, but it's a card game. And it's got a whole bunch of different sets that go into it, which makes it fun. But anyway, you can pick it up and you can play against people on the internet. And yeah, it's a deck building game. So you draft cards and you play cards and you try and get good combinations of the cards that work together. Usually it's by playing multiple cards of the same color, but not always. So anyway, I'm going to pick Star Realms. I didn't look it up on Board Game Geek, but I know that you can get physical cards, and I'm sure that they have it on here. And just let me look it up. Yeah, they've got a 2014, which is the original version, and then they have a 2021 version that has extra player decks and a play mat and stuff like that. And then there are a whole bunch of expansions. There's Gambit, Colony Wars, Frontiers. Anyway, the base game is weighted at 1.92. So, casual gamer, it's more complicated than your kind of really, really, really simple games. But it's definitely learnable for most people who just want a casual game. So I tell people that 2 is about where, kind of the casual game with enough complexity to make it interesting, but not so much that you have to actually go back to the rule book periodically to make sure that you're doing it right. Anyway, so yeah, so Star Realms, and then so I'm going to do kind of the shameless self-promotion stuff. I'm also trying to find a website for Star Realms because I know that you can just play it online. You can get it on Steam, I think. And then there's the mobile app as well. Anyway, so I've been talking to a lot of folks. I haven't gone as deep as Valentino has with the AI stuff, but I've been getting into it a bunch, and I recently had my contract end, and so I have a lot more time to start really diving in and building out what I want to build. But a lot of folks are interested in learning it, and so what I'm working on right now is actually building out a handful of AI systems, mostly kind of the agentic AI sort of things that we talked to Obi about. And I'm going to be putting on a boot camp at the beginning of next year and just walking people through a lot of this stuff, a lot of the approaches to setting up these agents and then, kind of fine tuning what they get. So keep an eye out for that. I do have a domain that I purchased for it, but I haven't set it up yet. So I'm probably going to just start dropping ads into the shows, in lieu of some of the ads that wind up getting put in that I get complaints about. So just keep an eye out for that. I think it was agenticaibootcamp.com or something like that. But anyway, so I'm doing that. And then, I'm kind of overhauling top end devs and, updating the members area and things like that. And so, you'll have a new experience for the inside of the boot camp. The way that I'm going to run it though is between now and Black Friday, you can get the Black Friday deal. So I'm looking at running essentially weekly help sessions. Right. So you'll get the curriculum for the boot camp every week. And I'm looking at 3 or 4 months. We'll have weekly calls for 6 months. and the price I'm looking at is $3,500. But if you do Black Friday, you get $2,000. I also intend to do an AI summit in December or January, and you will get a ticket to that if you sign up for the Black Friday. So you get the discount, you get the AI summit, and then you get, like I said, you get the calls for 6 months. And so yeah, that's the plan there. Did I say that the discount was for $2,000 for the Black Friday? Anyway, so that's what I'm working on now. I have to say that I also just did a Stripe Connect. I had a Stripe Connect to Top End Devs so that I can, because there are other podcasts that I want to start that are not programming podcasts. And so I don't want to put them on Top End Devs, because then it's like, oh, there's a political podcast on here. Or, hey, that, you know, Chuck's church stuff is on here, right? And so, yeah, so I'm looking to spin some of that off. And so I was like, okay, I want to do multi-tenancy, but then I want them to kind of run independently on the financial end of things, whether it's sponsorships or people buying courses or anything like that. So, anyway, Stripe Connect is pretty cool, and it's not. I was worried it was going to be super complicated to set up, and it wasn't. So, anyway, pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna pick Stripe Connect as well. All right, Gustavo, what are your picks?
Thank you. So for me, in terms of outside of development, it's just children, right? So I'm gonna pick Disney princesses. Disney princesses is my pick of the week. I spent the last 3 days in Disneyland with at a Disneyland hotel.
Fun.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And we took our 2 daughters to a makeover experience where they give them the whole treatment. They receive them as princesses. They do the whole princess setup, change their outfits, and then they take them for pictures. And the whole time they're like blown away. They're excited. They taking in the role of princesses. So that was a great experience for us and for the kids. So that's my pick of the week. Disney princesses.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny because all of my wife and my girls, they all have different princesses that they identify with. And what's funny is none of them pick the same one. So
that's good. That's good. Because I know my 2 daughters, sometimes they want to pick the same one. And the little one goes like, no, you're not. You're Olaf. You can be Olaf.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, for my wife, it's Aurora, Sleeping Beauty. My oldest daughter, it was Cinderella. My middle daughter was Ariel. And my youngest daughter, funny enough, you see all the little girls that want to be Elsa. She wanted to be Anna. So anyway, the one that didn't have the magic powers or whatever. But anyway,
yeah,
very fun.
Yeah, I feel like there's a big marketing and business lesson that could be learned through that. I think they have the market corner, Disney.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
In any case, well,
all right, good deal. If people want to find you online, Gustavo, where do they find you? Or if they want to hire you, because you said you were looking.
Yeah, on the market. Yeah, so Twitter, that's where I interact the most. G as Victor 1180. That's pretty much it right now.
GV1180.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's my Gustavo Valenzuela, my first name for my first letter, initials for my name, and then 1180. GV1180.
Awesome. Yeah, I just put that into the YouTube and Facebook. Yeah, I'm looking to, if you're hiring, Chuck at topenddevs.com, where you email me. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for coming, Gustavo.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
All right, till next time, folks. Max out.